My name is Tony Myers, and I'm producer-director of the IMAX 3D film Space Station.
I'm Marcia Ivins, and I'm one of the astronauts who helped shoot the film.
Lockheed Martin is our sponsor, presenting sponsor, who, together with NASA and IMAX, has formed a unique partnership over the years. This is our fifth film in space as a partnership, and we really couldn't make these films without that terrific support that Lockheed and NASA have given us. Even when you're doing titles for a 3D film, it's very hard to ignore the third dimension. So you're not seeing that here on the DVD, but these letters float in from behind the audience, above their heads, and pass them into the distance. I can't think of a more spectacular opening shot for a film called Space Station, and to me it's miraculous that we had such a shot. This was taken from our cargo bay camera, which is in the cargo bay of the shuttle, looking at the station after the shuttle has pulled away from its docking position.
By just a few dozen astronauts.
This is the point of view of an astronaut on EVA outside the station, going hand over hand along the hand grips that are on every part of the station. And in fact, this hasn't really happened. It is a scenario that is rehearsed again and again by astronaut and cosmonaut crews in the virtual reality lab at the Johnson Space Center. And this is a scenario whereby somebody out on EVA becomes untethered, i.e. detached from the shuttle. And we wanted very much to show the kinds of things that crews train hard for, to prepare them for unexpected things. And the VR that you do as a crew person there is kind of a low resolution. You do wear a 3D helmet, and you're part of this scenario. But we took the real scenario and enhanced it, and we enhanced it to the point where I think you really feel you're out there untethered. Very few people know that, in fact, there's a little surprise at the end of this sequence, which you will see when it's through. The astronauts train to recover from this scenario of being detached and not floating off into space by firing the jetpack on their backs and coming back into the station in safety. This is a surprise. You see, of course, that hasn't been a real sequence at all. This is what they're experiencing through their headsets there and practicing in that way. It's a very unique way of training.
We do integrated training in this virtual reality lab with the guys doing the EVAs, the spacewalks, and the robot arm operator. And you can see they're taking their atomic fireballs as your reward for having done a good job here. That's what they've just handed the crew.
Atomic fireballs being very hot candies. Here we are at the Kennedy Space Center, and this is a very interesting thing. This was a chamber in which they tested Apollo capsules, and they were testing the Destiny lab in that.
They've been designed
These are
and
the
built by
shuttle
thousands
part.
of
These are the
people,
station
15
parts
different
as they were being completed
Some
and
pieces are
tested on the
here
ground.
at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, others in Russia. But will they all fit together when they arrive in space?
This is in Kazakhstan, and as you can see, we're 57 meters from the base of the rocket, and the camera is in a blast-proof, or so we thought, housing bolted into the launch pad. And we tried all measure of prevention, but as you can see, the hazards remain. And a rock went right through the blast box window, and I thought, well, I might as well just stay in Kazakhstan because I've just trashed a 3D IMAX camera. As it turned out, there was a James Nyhouse, our DOP and trainer, astronaut trainer, had put a neutral density filter right in front of the lens. So when the rock was blasted through the port of the housing, it just hit this filter and dropped innocently down on the ground, so nothing was lost. And I have seen people in the theaters take off their glasses and look at them after that shot as if their glasses had been shattered.
They're more like high-tech delivery trucks.
This is a real picture of the space shuttle. It's a pretty interesting angle, the way that's shot. As we assemble the space station, it's built together like Tinker Toys. We started with one part. The one on the end of the arm there was the first part launched. It's a Russian cargo module. And then the node, which you see sitting at the bottom of the field of view, is like the ball of the Tinker Toy to which everything is attached. So that part was then attached to the node, and then and you can see that the Russian part is on the end of the arm, which is operated by somebody inside the space shuttle. And the node has 6 hatches on it, 4 radially and 2 on either end. And when we've attached modules to each of those doors, we then add another node module and start to add more parts, which is how the station is built.
And these views are taken again from the cargo bay IMAX 3D camera, which is at the back of the cargo bay looking forward, and that's the camera we use to get all of the construction scenes.
Their job is an extreme high-wire act.
We train for doing EVAs, for doing spacewalks in a large swimming pool, a neutral buoyancy facility. This water tank is so large you can put a large amount of a full-scale station structure in there. The guys who are being lowered now in the crane are wearing a real spacesuit, and they have weights on them so that their body is neutrally buoyant. And this allows them to practice the task they're going to do in a simulated weightless environment.
That's 2.5 times all the previous.
It's actually harder to do in the water because water has a little bit of pressure, a little bit of friction to it. So when they learn to do it in the water, when they do it in real life in space, it's actually easier.
The shuttle Discovery will take the first assembly crew to station. The commander of the flight is Brian Duffy.
Here's a crew on board the space shuttle. They are actually in orbit here. They're strapped into their seats so that they can control the way the shuttle flies as we do various maneuvers during assembly and docking.
The station is 45.
So this is a shuttle approaching the very bottom part of those 2 space station bits now in order to dock with it.
Ready to dock with our house in space. Our crew's going to hook up the basics: wiring, plumbing, and phone.
Again, it's a cargo bay camera view, and you're looking, that big lump in the foreground was actually another piece of the station that you'll see attached later.
Koichi here is operating the robot arm, so after docking, he takes the part that's going to be attached to the station out of the cargo bay of the shuttle and attaches it to the station. And Koichi made it look pretty easy, actually.
This is that part you saw previously all wrapped up, and it's being, now he's lifting it up on the arm, and that sunlight in the lens it's a 30 millimeter lens, which is a very, very wide angle lens that we're using on the cargo bay camera that allows you to get in the huge scale of everything. It's the only lens that you can have with the sun right in your face without flares.
This part that they're attaching has antennas. It had cooling lines to interface with modules that will be attached later.
You are the man, and that was a great moment.
Here's the crew getting ready, preparing for their spacewalk. Billy Mack, you see, and Leroy are wearing liquid-cooled underwear, so those white suits they're wearing have little tubes of water that are sewn in them, and that's what keeps them at a nice, happy temperature while they're outside in space. When the sun is shining in space, it could be over 250 degrees Fahrenheit, and when the sun is not shining, it could be minus 250. And so wearing that cooling garment keeps them at a nice, good temperature while they're working.
You can see how compressed the space is down here in the middeck. So imagine being there with lights and a 3D camera, as well as all of the suits and everything that we've been looking at. Not easy to film.
Here's the antenna being deployed. This is what facilitates all of the communication and the video downlinks from the space station. At this point, there's nobody living in the space station, so this is all getting ready for them.
What we do is we make up a list of scenes for the cargo bay camera that of events that happen at precise times, but then of course you have a flight where a lot of things don't happen at exactly the original time, and so certain events that you'd plan very carefully are now suddenly in the dark. And so you're replanning all the time. We support the flights from Mission Control like everybody else. There's a huge team at NASA that helps us do this. And so we're always amazed that every foot of each load of cargo bay camera is 8 minutes long. That's all you have on a whole flight. And I think on this flight and every flight, they did an absolutely fantastic job to capitalize on that 8 minutes worth.
That he needs to do spacewalk activity.
We're always very nervous knowing that we only have 8 minutes of film and there's 16 shots to shoot with that, that we start the camera and we stop the camera, actually, and not sort of roll away all the film on the wrong shot, because we know Tony will not be happy if we do that. You can see the guy when he's doing his spacewalk here. He's got tools, he's got a big drill. All of his equipment is tethered to him, but he's sort of like a floating mess here with all of these things, and it's quite a difficult task to keep all of that stuff contained while you're trying to do your job.
But imagine doing that when you look at that shot.
This is the control device for what you saw in that original VR shot. Because the shuttle and the station are attached to each other, if you get unattached, you can't fly the whole shuttle over to get them again. So they do fly this backpack. And here they're doing a test of how well the crew can control his position, stop an out-of-control motion, and fly back to something he can hold on to again.
We were so pleased because this was the sort of real resolution of that virtual reality sequence, to have the real guys doing the real test. Kind of made a nice closure on that, apart from being a truly spectacular shot.
And a truly spectacular experience, because never during a spacewalk are you untethered or unattached to a foot restraint. So floating free was pretty cool.
Again, a cargo bay camera view at the end of this flight, where you actually see now the third piece added, and this station is starting to really look like a station now, with 3 separate pieces all joined together over a beautiful Earth view.
At the top is Zvezda. That's where the crews will live. Below it is Zarya, kind of a big float-through closet for storage. And at the bottom, the truss and the Unity node, where the next additions will be attached. The station's now ready for people.
Here we are in Kazakhstan, and that's Yuri Gagarin, a monument to the first human in orbit. And
40 years later, this crew is getting ready
we
to
had two
leave
trips
on the
there,
space
one
station.
to film the Proton launch, and this is the second to film the launch of the first shuttle, permanent shuttle
The crew's
crew.
commander is an American, Bill Shepard, known as Shep. His wife Beth is the
This crew had been
astronaut
training for,
I was fortunate in
I don't
that
know,
I was
4 or
there
5
with
years
an
by the
astronaut
time
who
the
is strength
flight
and
was really
conditioning
scheduled.
coach.
They're sitting there, the prime crew, and then there's
Russian
always a
crews were not
backup
able to
crew for the
come on
Soyuz that
since their
trains right up along with them till the moment they launch.
And they're there behind the glass so that they won't get contaminated right before flight with anybody's cold. And this is a very interesting place. This is the Cosmonaut Center in Kazakhstan, and they have this beautiful walkway which has, you can't see it very clearly here, but each of those trees was planted for each cosmonaut. This is about the shot where Beth and Shep are walking along the Cosmonaut Avenue of trees. This was literally a day and a half before Shep's launch, and every minute of his time was accounted for. I kind of wanted to see them together before the launch and explore what that's like emotionally.
Many of our pilots were military pilots whose military experience was fighting with the Russians. And so this joining hands has been a really wonderful emotional experience for people.
I can't tell you what an emotional experience it was for me to be shooting this on this early morning when this rocket rolled in. Because there was a little sign over on the wall that said this was the 405th launch going from that pad. And I thought, what an incredible achievement that is. And, you know, standing there, and it was about 5:30 in the morning, in the mist and the fog, it was just a wonderful experience to be part of that excitement and to be among people who were so proud of their space program.
Unlike the U.S. space program, this rocket is fully fueled as people are standing next to it as it's rolled out. In the shuttle program, we're 8 miles away when the rocket is fully fueled.
It is so exciting to be standing right there at the base of this rocket as the crew comes out. And I couldn't believe that we were able to get this shot because it's not staged. That's the real event. And they're about to go up in the elevator and get in the capsule and go. And of course, as Marcia said, we wouldn't have, because it's set up so differently, that kind of access on launch day at the Kennedy Space Center.
What you're seeing is 3 guys about to leave the planet for 3 months.
I rode up in this elevator, and I can tell you, it really gives you pause when you get to the top and you see how small that Soyuz capsule is. I had a whole new respect for anybody that launches to space in this vehicle, because you're up there and there's just that little tiny capsule.
Once you're at the end of the powered flight and you're floating around in orbit, then you can sit back and say, boy, I'm glad that we have gotten that done successfully.
This isn't an easy shot to get because unlike the Kennedy Space Center, the Russians don't give a countdown. So you have a sort of a launch time, but you're out there in the middle of this desert field and you have kind of really no idea when the rocket's going to go. And of course, in IMAX, you don't have a lot of footage to waste, unlike tape. So you better get it right.
Sitting in your couch with
The
your
Soyuz
knees
capsule,
down,
the little wings that you
almost
see
to
sticking
your
out there,
chin,
are solar arrays. As we go around the Earth every 90 minutes for 45 minutes when the sun shines on those arrays, then power is generated and stored in batteries for the dark part of the orbit. And you can see that now it's attached to the end of this whole space station. They're home for the first time.
This was among the first footage that we ever got back from the cabin camera inside the station itself. We'd had footage from shuttle, but this was the first time we'd seen the interior of the station with the cabin camera.
Set to go.
And the two modules they've just flown through are both the Russian modules. This is an incredibly hard scene to shoot, actually, floating like that. Here the crew is taking a bath. This is really how you take a bath. He's squirted on a ball of water, and then he rubs it around, and you can see Yuri's shaving. His razor's just floating there. And this is a daily hygiene thing. You know, this is how you do it in space.
Big favorite with the kids in the audience. And that's kids to, 95 years old.
After we got the node open, it started to seem like a really expansive place.
The space station is like one giant closet, and so what you see is all of these bags have all of the provisions that the crew needs.
This is a case of a highly orchestrated shot devised by Shep, where certain 3D objects come floating in and are caught and passed on to another. This crew worked incredibly hard to do visually interesting scenes that had movement and all the characteristics you need to keep the 3D interest going.
We have to exercise every
That's a
day.
view, that's a window in the floor of the
Relatively short flight, you feel difference in
Service
muscles.
module.
service module.
When we did this exercise near the window,
Exercise is something that we do on the order of 2 hours a day on the space station, and this is one of the exercise devices, a Russian one. It's always nice to exercise with a window. You watch the Earth go by as you pedal.
probably nicest thing in sleep compartment.
And this is one of the individual sleep compartments that the crew has. We go around the Earth every 90 minutes, and so each time a crew, 16 times a day, you see various parts of the Earth as you fly by, and not a single crew, no matter how long they've been in space, has ever gotten tired of that.
Country, one city.
This is a ball of water. Every single shuttle crew and station crew plays with their food, plays with water, which is kind of cool, water when it's floating.
You need a degree in plumbing to keep all your
I
life
could
supports
not
systems
believe the
running.
maze of wires and cables everywhere. Once you peel away panels on the station, it gives you an idea of just how complex it is, the operation of keeping people alive in a closed system.
This is NA1SS. Go ahead with
AB5A, this is Adam Gittleman.
One of the main ways that we could talk to the crews in the first couple missions was through the ham radio, and the school is talking to them on the ham radio. But we actually, every time they came overhead the U.S., we were talking to the crew. We'd have special guests so that they would have to guess who it was that we had talking to them that particular day.
That's what we'd recommend.
Hi, I'm Santosh Bhavani.
It's interesting when the crew on board were kids. This was not something you could do, talk to a crew in orbit on a ham radio. And now kids take that for granted. Well, I just talked to the space station crew today, on ham radio.
There's to be a huge new addition to it.
This is the Destiny Lab. We were the last people, our little film crew and the closeout crew here at Kennedy Space Center, to see this lab on the Earth, and it's being loaded here into the shuttle's cargo bay.
The lab was deployed on my flight, and in this lab, well, we'll talk about that. Shep's having a haircut here. When you spend an extended period of time in space and your hair gets long, and you want to look nice on the downlink video, so he's having a haircut and he's using a vacuum cleaner to suck in the pieces of hair. Actually, the guys are quite good. Here's my crew arriving on the station. We're about to deliver the laboratory module, which is the cornerstone of all of the science that's being done. The crew who on board station who has not seen anybody but each other for 3 months is always pretty happy about that. You haven't seen us attach the lab. The lab is now attached, and here we are entering the lab for the first time. Now this scene, Tom is holding the camera, and I'm the dolly, pulling him back at the same rate the crew is entering, so that we maintain the correct focus. You saw me sort of poke up there in the middle as I came underneath of Tom. And this is this was a scene that Sergei invented that we do. We bring up various little bits of things, including me, and transfer them to different parts of the lab. We rehearsed that a couple times so that he wouldn't bang my head on the hatch as we went by. We did have to transfer one rack from one side of the lab to the other, and so we filmed this because it was a big, large object coming at you in 3D. After we got the lab attached, 2 of our shuttle crew members were outside filming this, and Shep orchestrated this and was so proud of this shot. He actually said, "This is an Oscar," because of the whole pullback and look from the outside into the inside. And we coordinated this basically between the shuttle and the station as we were doing this. Here's the shuttle pulling away. Those are the cargo bay lights that you see in the cargo bay. This is one of those shots that Tony orchestrates that just to get the right sunrise at the right moment, to get the perfect lighting on it. She says, shoot at this time, and we do, and it works. Inside the lab, as it's attached before any of the hardware has been put in, Shep's got a pretty big volume to play around in. You'll see in later shots as we've added the racks and the science experiments that the room fills up pretty good.
What I liked about this shot was that it had a kind of empty feel, and because Marsha's crew had just pulled away in the movie, you know, I wondered what it was like for a crew suddenly being left alone. After you've got 7 people all roaring around inside, suddenly there's only the 2 of you. And so all of these shots kind of fell into that category of, okay, it's just these guys left, and the mood kind of switches, and it's coming up for Christmas, and it's a little bit the loneliness of the long-duration space traveler.
That's Jake, who has just come from seeing Shep on the television with his antlers on. When, as Shep was on board the station through Christmas, and he had arranged through a mutual friend to have a puppy delivered for Beth as a Christmas present. Shep wanted to see what it looked like when the puppy was delivered, so I was there with a still camera. And I took the pictures and then just sent them to Tony to show her, and now they're in the movie.
One of the huge challenges for me was trying to deal with 7 different crews who were coming and going from the station, and how the audience would ever separate them from each other and get to know them a little bit. You had the crews going on the shuttle, back and forth on short visits, and then the 2 long-duration crews. And one of the ways was to introduce the second crew kind of in a more emotional way, about a contemplative way. So we shot this little sequence of Susan Helms just before her launch, got a little bit of her thoughts about leaving the Earth. What do you think about when you know you're going to be away for several months living in space? And so that was kind of how we tried to make a separation between one chapter and another without confusing everybody hopelessly. She gave it an extremely nice feel. In fact, she had closed off all her credit cards, ended her apartment lease. She really took going to space very seriously.
We won't have while we're in the space station.
There is nothing that compares with standing on the launch pad and seeing the sort of might of this machine. This is the rolling back of the service structure. You really just feel the power of all that goes into a shuttle launch when you're shooting that.
The suit feels good. What I'll really miss are the normal things I like to do.
I guess the one thing that is more emotional is seeing it fueled with steam coming out of it, knowing that everybody else is 8 miles away and you are the only people on the launch pad getting ready to leave the planet. You leave the planet in this suit, which is a fairly big, heavy kind of a suit. I was actually being a Foley artist for one of these scenes and getting into this so that you got the right sound of the suit crunching while we put on the equipment. The harness that he's wearing there is that if we have to jump out of the orbiter at some point. Walking out and into the van, waving goodbye to people, taking that 15-minute ride out to the launch pad has a different emotional flavor for everybody who does this, knowing that you are probably leaving the planet.
So here we are back in the blast box again. The camera's back in the blast box with a new piece of glass. And curiously enough, we're the exact same distance away from the base of the rocket, 57 meters. The camera's actually bolted into the concrete of the launch pad to get this shot. And it is started remotely, you hope.
Seeing this in IMAX, actually hearing it in IMAX, is much more dramatic than it is on the inside. We just have to say that. It's from the outside, it's unbelievable. On the inside, you've been sort of drop-kicked somewhere, is what the feeling is. This is a view from inside. You see the crew sort of shaking and rattling in there. And this is a view out the back window as we leave the launch pad from not an IMAX camera, I have to say, but from a little tiny mini camera. And as the vehicle rolls by gimbaling the main engines, you can see the whole coast of the Kennedy Space Center there.
That's really a unique view out the window, and we were very fortunate that it was actually shot out the window on the same launch that we were filming. So the two went together, the light matched, and we turned what was an 8mm video into an IMAX 3D shot with the magic of digital.
Here's the shuttle approaching the station again. It's got a different module. That's a logistics module. It has transfer stuff in it. And after it's attached, here's one way to transfer things. You either carry it in your hands, you carry it in your legs.
Who chose the color scheme?
I don't know. They should be shot for choosing that color scheme.
Has there been a lot of complaint about that?
Nah, there's too much stuff in the way. You can't see it. That's the logistics module that you just see on the inside there. It's attached to one of those radial ports of the node. Here we are looking into the lab. It's got a little bit more stuff in it than it did on the last flight.
Yeah, that's one of the things I enjoyed seeing is the progressive filling up you saw the empty module earlier with Shep floating around in it, and now it's getting more full, and probably now you can't move in there.
This is one of the things that went into the lab. This is a systems rack, a payload rack. They all kind of look the same. They weigh about 2,000 pounds, maybe 3,000 pounds, and basically two guys are just moving it very slowly, as you see, with their fingers, which is one of the neat things about being in space. You can actually throw around 3,000 pounds with your fingers. Shep is now handing off to the next commander of the space station, and showing him where he's hidden all the things and where he's put all the parts. And here's one crew saying goodbye, and the next crew taking over.
In a rush, kind of exchanging this job. It was, to me, a historic chapter in space.
It's always bittersweet for a crew who is leaving the space station. They've had a really unique experience. They're anxious to get home to their families, and they're sort of reluctant to leave this very sort of quiet and their place there in space.
The crew heads home. The new tenants have already done some interior decorating.
I have a kind of overview story that I can give sort of not in real time about this whole sequence of shots, which is that once the shuttle has left, we obviously things calm down a lot for the crew that remains there in terms of their timeline. And one of the logistical problems we always had was that our film got radiated, our raw stock, if you left it on orbit for more than 15 days. And so we devised an experiment to see if we left a roll of film behind so that the crew could shoot it in the quiet times when the shuttle isn't there to see if it would come out okay. So we left a roll of film on orbit between shuttle missions, and the crew stored it between water bags.
Which is what you see there in the scene. Those are bags of water.
And the crew stored it between water bags, which protected it. And in fact, all the scenes on that roll came out beautifully. So that allowed us to leave 2 more rolls during this final phase of the film where the second permanent crew was there, and they were able to shoot a series of scenes for us at not their leisure, but in far less pressing circumstances where they didn't have a loaded timeline. And we got sort of interior scenes like this of the plants growing, and I was able to discuss with Jim Voss here the nature of those scenes as they occurred to him to do. We had a more relaxed dialogue back and forth, always through the right channels. But in fact, one time I actually got a phone call from space on my cell phone. And that was to discuss scenes. We didn't do anything improper, but that was one of the highlights of making the whole film, was having my cell phone ring, picking it up, and hearing it was the space station on the other end.
Was trying to understand how you could design a control system to teach itself to work better.
And just to put that in context, that allowed us, that leaving film in between shuttle flights allowed us to get a whole series of shots on only 2 rolls, but every single shot on those 2 rolls was used.
This one's called Raffaello. Inside it, astronauts from 3 countries are at work. Chris Hadfield is Canadian.
The interesting thing about these IMAX scenes is because there is so little film, and the film is big and the camera is big, every single scene that you see here is shot on the first take. There are no retakes of film. It's the first scene, and Tony uses nearly every inch of that. We do rehearse it a couple times to make sure that the timing is right and we can get the scene in 30 seconds and the lighting looks good, but we don't have a lot of time to do that. So the whole rehearsal and shoot of a scene could take maybe 15 minutes. It's the first take, which to me is astounding.
Well, it's a testimony to the skill of our on-orbit directors and their lighting technicians. They're recording sound. They're doing everything that a whole film crew does on Earth just themselves, and they do a fabulous job. And they're fantastic, wonderful students to have because they're 10 times smarter than you are.
Well, I don't know that we're 10 times smarter, but we think it's pretty cool to play with all this stuff that, Hollywood takes for granted. To us, it's all new and sort of fun.
In fact, when Marcia said it's all new, we have many of our crew people on Space Station we had actually flown with on previous IMAX 2D films. So it was kind of like a comfortable relationship. In Marcia's case, she had flown with us twice before. And she helped us with the design of the 3D space camera. So you get all kinds of valuable insights when you're in the early phases that play off that earlier experience.
You saw the U.S. space suit for doing spacewalks, EVAs. This is the Russian one that Susan is getting in there. It's just very different than what we fly in the U.S.
Get inside is a real challenge. It's one of these types of capsules.
This is truly one of the greatest achievements technically in terms of a shot. The space there's probably about 2 inches on either side of the IMAX camera as they're flying down and probably about 1 inch as they're going through this hatch into the Soyuz. It was a shot I had asked them to try and never expected that they could actually achieve it. It's absolutely wondrous. And coming up in a minute, there's going to be a shot of the station from the window of Soyuz, and that was a special surprise delivered to me. I didn't dare even ask for this shot, and Sergei and Shep decided they'd like to try and get it. They took the camera in there. They measured everything carefully because there's not an inch of tolerance left. And on the day, they got in there and they discovered they'd forgotten to take the lens box into consideration, and they couldn't get the camera with the lens on into the window. So Sergei went back into the station and got the shaving mirror and put it at exactly the right angle. So they turned the camera around and shot the window view into the shaving mirror. And that's what I call true innovation.
And they were so proud of themselves, they could barely stand it. We were getting emails with hey, you know, top secret, cool, you're not going to believe this. And we had to wait until the film came home until we could see it. This is the airlock module. Is that right? On there? That's being picked up now with the station's robot arm from the cargo bay of the shuttle and put on the station. Previous to this, on the station, only spacewalks could be done when the shuttle was attached. And now with this airlock, the crew can do and has done numerous spacewalks without the shuttle being attached, and they're doing it through that particular module.
Talents are required in order to keep from ramming it into the side of the space station. Video cameras are our most
These are some of the most beautiful scenes in the film, shot with the cargo bay camera, and it's in a different position this time. This one is an absolute mastery of timing. I mean, they can't see what they can see on a laptop, but it's kind of like shooting remotely, and these views were beyond my wildest dreams for successful. Just great.
Turning the camera on when the lighting is right, when the sun is right, when the action is in the field of view and not being able to see it is luck, I think, and we've been really lucky, and we've had good direction, so to be lucky. This is at one of the hatches that's on the wide doors, the radial ports of the node, and also in the airlock, and Janet and Susan are sort of turning that around. I know that door is probably a few hundred pounds in order to attach it in the right place.
I just liked this shot because it was so totally weird looking. A guy in his long underwear wearing a sort of diver's mask exercising, and Marcia can explain
what it is. When we do a spacewalk, the spacesuit runs at a much lower pressure than the sea level pressure that's in the vehicle there, and when he gets in that lower pressure so that he doesn't get the bends, basically, by going to a lower pressure, he pre-breathes with oxygen in order to wash the nitrogen out of his system. In order to facilitate that, the faster you breathe, the faster the nitrogen is washed out, and so they have an exercise protocol. And so he was bicycling and pulling on a bungee cord with his arms while he's pre-breathing, but he does kind of look goony there when he's doing that shot. And now after they've done their pre-breathe and in their suit, they're coming out of the hatch of this brand new airlock for the first time.
That's worth all the risks and something to celebrate.
3 things we always ask each crew to try and shoot. One is everyday activities like eating, which of course they've done forever and are bored with. 2, a celebration for the things they've achieved. And 3, have some fun. So I had done the usual 1, 2, 3, and boy, did they deliver in spades in this shot. They really had fun.
When Janet throws this orange here, I can hear little kids saying, "I got the orange," when they're sitting in the theater. There's one sleep compartment in the lab, and the other 2 are in the Russian service module. And sort of sleeping all by yourself here in a completely empty, darkened lab, orbiting the Earth at 17,000 miles per hour, 250 miles above it, doesn't seem to faze her in the least.
You see her little book there, her nighttime reading. It's not very often that you see beautiful shots of Earth shot in winter. I'm particularly partial to that one because it's over Canada.
Let me tell you now, when I come home feeling tired and weak, I go up where the air is.
This may have been done for the movie, but this is a real problem in space of things just getting away on you and then having to track them down again.
One mystery that came back was the notes from Jim Voss saying he'd shot this and so shot on such and such a roll, and then 5 seconds of aliens. And that was the 5 seconds of aliens. I didn't know he meant it literally.
This scene is very hard to shoot in order to keep the lighting constant everywhere.
You can see and feel and try things you can't do anywhere else. In search of a better life on Earth and away from Earth.
The guys are hams no matter where you put them, whether they're outside or inside.
We were so lucky to have Tom Cruise as our narrator, linking all of these scenes together. And I think when I see these scenes, I always think of Tom's enthusiasm, because what we asked him for, he's a very big space fan, and we just asked him to impart some of that enthusiasm. It's a boyish enthusiasm, if you will, for the project and the undertaking, and I think that he absolutely did that. He became one of us, enjoying the awesome experience that building a space station really is.
And when you consider what we've done in building a space station, in putting this fragile but amazing structure in orbit around the Earth with participation from 16 countries, it's pretty incredible.
Nobody had a better crew to work with than the 27 astronauts and cosmonauts that we were privileged to train. Makes your life really easy. I'm very proud whenever I see how it's all come together in a film like this, especially in 3D. And my name is Toni Myers, and it was a great deal of fun working on this project.
And from the crew standpoint, when you see this movie on the big screen and you can sit back and say, I was part of that, that's almost as good as saying, I went to space. And we are also uniquely fortunate to have been part of this experience in making a film that lets people see what it's really been like to be in space. And I'm Marcia Ivins, and I'm proud to have been part of that.